Welcome to NatCon 2026.
This is the weekend for your future.
So buckle up, get ready. 2026 is coming at us like a freight train.
Big organizations are not built fast, they're built right.
We have fun.
Have fun.
We make money.
We make money.
And we make a difference, baby.
Talk to that person. Recruit that agent. How hungry are you for success?
You're worried about, I'm being annoying. No, you're not annoying, you're invisible.
Andy Albright taught me how to dream. He showed me a world of what could be.
Don't quit because you're going slow. Keep pushing. Light is at the end of the tunnel.
The opportunity you have right now is bigger than anything I've ever seen.
National Convention. This ain't our first rodeo, and it won't be our last.
Welcome to the Wednesday Call Live. Now let's hear it for our special guest hosts, Adam and Beth Katz.
We are back. Hello, Alliance Nation. Happy Friday to you. It is morning for everybody, so good morning on this beautiful Friday, the 20th. We are glad to be back with you. The Katz family takeover continues. Thank you, Andy and Jane Albright, for giving us a dream. You know, thank you for giving us opportunity, for believing in us, and allowing us to grow and become, giving us room to grow and become the people that we needed to become. You know, we don't take this lightly. Being put in charge of the activity call, Andy turning his whole organization over to us. We're very honored by that and humbled by it. We are excited about where our business is, but we're more excited about where our business is going. You know, God's hand has been on our business, and it continues to be. And you plus God equals a majority. How about that? So we are here on Wednesday. We talked a lot about dreaming and why it's important to dream, and told you guys some stories of, you know, about raising the kids, and Beth and I, you know, going through this journey together, and you know, some of the struggles, and then some of the victories that we've been able to enjoy because we're willing to go through the struggles. Today we want to get a little more hands, you know, nitty gritty, get down in the dirt on what does it take to have these dreams come true. Okay. And to be clear, without the dream, without the goal, without the vision, then without that focus, you don't know where you're going to end up. So it all continues to start with that dream. But then you have to add in the work. You have to add in the disciplines. There have been two really strong books that have been recommended by Andy through 8 Steps and you know, the Alliance book list and all of that. One is called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And that has more of the science behind how to develop habits and what makes habits and things like that. So it's more of a technical book, talking about the neurological factors and things like that. And then the other book, which has become, I think, even more popular in the Alliance world, is a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which kind of simplifies how to create these habits. And there's a quote out there that says, you know, bad habits are easy to form and hard to live with, whereas good habits are hard to form but easy to live with. And it's creating those habits, it's creating those daily disciplines that will help you become the person you want to become and help you run a business that you want to have. It's a business you can be proud of, and a business that will support the lifestyle that you and your family have decided this is what we want to do. So why don't we do this real quick for those of you who weren't with us on Wednesday. Let's just kind of introduce everybody on the call. My name is Adam Katz. I'm here in Wilmington, North Carolina at my my office that we have here in Wilmington. I am by myself. As you can see, my wife Beth is sitting there with Sarah Hartley. So Beth, why don't you introduce yourself real quick, and then Sarah, and then Emily and Harry.
Sure. So like Adam said, Beth Katz, we have had the privilege and honor of being with the Alliance since it started. We go back with Andy and Jane, 34 years. And what a blessing it is to first of all, to have a relationship with people that lasts that long. We're in a world where it's like, well, you hurt my feelings, and I'm going to go take my ball and go home. And Andy and Jane have created an environment where we've had a relationship, not always perfect. We've not been perfect, but we've had a relationship that has allowed us to build a lifestyle. And then as Andy created the Alliance, that opportunity to come in and take advantage of a system, apply work ethic, and let that be your dream machine, the ability to produce the dreams that you want for your life. So background education, taught high school Latin and English, which does me a whole lot of nothing good. But it got us jobs, which was huge. And then I spent the majority of my adult life being a stay-at-home mom to 3 amazing kids. So you get 2 of them today. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
I am Sarah Katz Hartley. I'm the oldest of the Katz kids, and Emily, Andrew, and I, we grew up in the Alliance. We grew up all right style. This has always been our home. So I currently live in Macon, Georgia. My husband's a captain in the Air Force, so that's why we are here in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. And we have 2 boys. Michael is 3, and Winter just turned a month on Monday.
Emily and Harry.
Thank you so much for having us. We are Emily and Harry Cardillo. My background, I grew up, like Sarah said, in the Alliance, and I ended up going off to NC State to get my bachelor's degree in business management. Yep, go Pack. And graduated at the age of 19 with that bachelor's degree. I had started part-time in the Alliance, just working 2 years, and then I've been full-time for about 4 years now. And through that, met my husband.
Yes. So I'm Harry Cardillo, just like Emily said. I'm out of Raleigh, North Carolina. I like to say I'm direct to Adam and Beth in more ways than one. My upbringing was a little bit different than Sarah's and Emily's, obviously. I didn't grow up in the business, but just super blessed to be brought into it. I was a meat cutter before getting into this, and just saw the opportunity, and we've been running with it ever since.
To be clear, meat cutter is a butcher at a grocery store.
That's my
anyway, so we're excited to have this conversation. And look, the disciplines. One of my favorite expressions. We were in Fayetteville last night doing a hotspot at Dorothy McNair, new agency manager, Dorothy McNair's office. One of the things we talked about is this: you will either learn to discipline yourself, or you will be disciplined by others. And what that means is this: if you can't handle the freedom of being self-employed. When I say freedom, it's because nobody is making you do this. Like, nobody can make you make phone calls. Nobody can make you recruit. Nobody can make you travel. We don't have that ability. We can encourage you. We can inspire you. We can try and do all of those things. But ultimately, you got to decide, how big is your dream? How badly do you want to go after it? And it's so easy. The things we do in this business are not that difficult. Especially from a physical perspective. What are you going to get? A blister on your finger? Dialing the phone too much? Get some throat coat. So if you're on the phone too much, you're going to clear up your sore throat. But I mean, so nothing we do is that hard. Making phone calls isn't that hard. But what's even easier is not making phone calls. And without that discipline of your schedule and forcing yourself to follow the schedule you put in place, because it's one thing to have a schedule, it's another thing to actually execute the schedule. Without those disciplines in place, then you're going to be lost, and you're going to have to go get a job where somebody else is going to tell you what time you have to get up in the morning, what time you have to be at work, what time you can go home, when you can have vacation, when you can do this, when you can do that, because you weren't able to discipline your own schedule, so you needed to go find another person, a boss, in a job where you're just over broke, to discipline you to actually do the things. And so it's so important that you understand the context. This is one of the most important calls you may hear this year, not because we're doing it, but just because of the topic of the habits and everything like that. There's a book out there. We talked about The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly on Wednesday. Today I want to bring up Off Balance by Matthew Kelly. And the idea that balance, that everybody's looking for balance in their life, their work-life balance. And that's a myth. That's not what people want. What people want is fulfillment. They want fulfillment. They want to be in pursuit of a worthwhile goal. And again, you're not going to be balanced if you don't have the disciplines to do what you need to do when you need to do it. And it's amazing. December a lot of times is one of the best months of the Alliance, not because it's a great time to sell insurance, although it is, but because people are trying to qualify for the trip that year. And they waited to the last minute to qualify. It's like you can take the amount of points you need to qualify for Portugal, divide it by 12 months, and start January 1st making sure that you hit each month. But most people don't do that. A lot of folks are already behind. We're towards the end of February. We got 8 days left in February, and so now we're 2 months in. How are you doing on the trip? And if you're not doing well, it's probably because of your habits. It's probably because of a lack of discipline to do the work necessary that you needed. And so, people, they hit panic mode when it turns, Thanksgiving, and they're like, oh my gosh, I need a lot of points to qualify for the trip. I need to go to work. And it's amazing how somebody who couldn't do 10,000 a month for the previous 11 months all of a sudden writes 45,000 in December to win the trip. If you have that ability in December, guess what? You have that ability all year long. And if you can take the discipline that you had in December, where you were desperate and your back was against the wall, and act as if you were desperate all year long, what could you actually do? What would your business look like? What would your bank account look like? And so that's where the disciplines really come in. So I'm big on that. Learn to discipline yourself, or you will be disciplined by others. Here's another one that Andy talks about a lot. He said, would you be willing to go to jail for 2 years if when you got out you'd have $250,000 a year income for life? Okay. Now, you don't have to break any laws. You're not literally going to jail. But what you are is you're disciplining yourself to build your business, to do the things necessary in your business. You know what you don't get when you're in jail? You don't get a 2-week vacation. You know what you don't get? You don't have birthday parties every Saturday. You don't get to go to every t-ball practice, every football practice, every basketball game. You're going to miss. If you're in jail, you miss stuff. Would you sacrifice the next 2 years to focus on what you need to do so that you can buy back your time for the rest of your life? Now, some people aren't willing to do that, and that's fine. Everybody's in a different season in their life. But that always resonated with me. That always rang true with me. It's just like, why would I not put the time in today? I will do today. I will do today what others won't, so I can live tomorrow like others can't. Let that one drip down. I'm going to say it again, because this is so important. I will do today what others won't, what they're not willing to do, what they're not willing to discipline themselves to do, what they won't sacrifice for. I will do today what others won't, what most of America won't do, so I can live tomorrow like others can't. Because I was willing to do the things today to give me the opportunities tomorrow. So many people, they won't sacrifice anything today, and they wonder why they can't do the things they want to do tomorrow. And next thing you're going to know, you're going to wake up old and broke and unhappy. But we're going to fix that today. We're going to talk about discipline. So let's talk about the disciplines, in context of the 8 steps to success. First step to success is personal use. I think one of the saddest things that I've ever heard is for a licensed insurance agent to have a GoFundMe page. Sarah, talk about you got a month old, and what did you just do?
We just wrote his first IUL. So I just, right before this call started, I told Adam the policy's coming in the mail to you. So keep an eye out for it.
It's coming to me. Okay.
Yeah. Because we know the value of the policies that we sell. And setting up my 1 month old for his retirement is a value that we have as a family. And it's a value that we all have. And it's double digits, the policies that Jacob and I have throughout our family.
And that's a choice, and that's a discipline in itself. But to go ahead and get a policy in place. See, fortunately, so I haven't seen the illustration on Winter's policy yet, but I remember the illustration for Michael that we took out 3 years ago. And we're not like, putting in obscene amounts of money. We're putting $200 a month into Michael's policy. But when he's 51, it's going to be worth over $1 million tax-free cash. My boy's going to be a millionaire just from the policy. And that's if we don't overfund it. That's if we don't, put more money in when we have extra, or when he starts working, he starts contributing more, because there's a window in his policy that it was a discipline to set that up immediately, that we take advantage of maximizing the time compounding on it. And you don't know what tomorrow brings. We had this one agent one time, he would change his policy every year because he wanted a new commission on it. And so every year he'd replace his own policy, get a new commission on it, until one time in the middle of one of those transitions, he got diagnosed with cancer. And he ended up passing with no life insurance on himself because he played the game. Beth, talk about the importance of getting your kids covered, the discipline of taking care of those details early, in context of Andrew's situation.
Right. And like Adam said, we don't know what life is going to bring. And we look at our kids and we envision for them a long, absolutely healthy life. But when Andrew was 13 years old, we had just moved Sarah into college, and he came home from that experience very lethargic. And my first instinct was that he was missing his big sister. It was the first big transition in our family. And then the mama instinct kicked in and said, you better get him to the doctor. And so took him to the doctor. They pull him back into the examining room, and they like pop their head in, and then they walk out, and I'm hearing them say, call the hospital. We're sending him to pediatric intensive care. And he was diagnosed with type 1 juvenile diabetes. And I walked out of that appointment because they said, you can get him to the hospital faster than the ambulance can get here and get over there. I walked out and I said, my first thought was, thank goodness we have a policy on Andrew, because in that moment he became uninsurable. And what I wouldn't give to have done 100 times what we put on him than what we did. But he's pretty set because we had made that decision. And then my second thought was, oh my goodness, what we do really matters. How many more parents are going to have sucker punch moments and they haven't been prepared? What we do matters.
Fortunately, we were disciplined enough as we got into the insurance world that we made sure our family was covered. And so I would encourage you to do the same, because it's, to me, there truly is no sadder statement than a life insurance agent needing their family to have a GoFundMe page. Because the one thing we should do, how can you talk with credibility if you don't have a policy on yourself? So that's good for the first team player step. The second team player step is work. W-O-R-K. Excuse me for cussing so early in the morning, especially you West Coast guys. But you're going to have to do the work. And this is really where the rubber hits the road. And this is really, the biggest place where the disciplines come in. And the work, like we said, is not that difficult, but it's also easy not to do it. So Harry and Emily, talk about because you guys are living life. They got married a year ago, December. About 14 months ago. You've taken multiple trips. You guys are making good money here at the Alliance, and so you have disposable income, as they like to say. So you guys are able to live life like a lot of newlyweds can't live life. But one of the things I've always noticed about you guys, and I'm very proud of, is no matter what you're doing or what you're in the middle of, you have your schedule set. You have, it's like, where's Harry? Oh, he has a Zoom call scheduled. 8 o'clock at night when he's at our house, he's not going to be able to join us for dinner because he already has these Zoom calls, and so you don't allow whatever else is going around to interfere with your disciplines of your business. So talk about that from your perspective, why it's important to you guys, and how do you manage your calendar to make sure that you're productive while living the life that you're living?
Yeah, absolutely. The main thing always does come back to your calendar, right? I remember one of the first conversations I had with Andy was about just that. And he had his calendar open to me and he was showing me all the different things that he had listed on there. And he was telling me, how he was mad at the person who booked all that stuff, right? Which is him. But he was telling me the reason why he's had so much success is because he is a slave to his calendar. Right. When he puts something on there, he's made a commitment and he's going to make it happen. So that was one of my biggest takeaways right off the bat. And just trying to follow that example, that's kind of what we're doing. Right. Being willing to meet with agents like you're talking about late at night, filling the gaps in the calendar with Zoom calls, things of that nature, and sticking to it. Right. It's one thing to put it in the calendar. It's another thing to follow through and actually show up for the Zoom call. With us doing all the traveling we've been doing, we were just over in Macon, spending some time hanging out with little Winter and little Michael, doing some babysitting. But it's very easy to, in those situations, fall into vacation mode, right? I'm away from the house, there's not, it's a different environment. So it's very easy to just sit there and hang out with the babies. But if you have your calendar full and you make a commitment that I'm going to stick to that calendar, then you're able to work in those environments.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of that book you were talking about, Off Balance, and if you haven't read it, there's not balance in life. There's priorities, and you get to choose what those priorities are. And we talk a lot like God, family, business. That's our priority. That doesn't mean that I spend 20 hours a day praying. Like that's just because you have your priorities doesn't mean that's necessarily how your time is allocated. But when you know what your priorities are, you're going to put those into your life in the right order and be disciplined with schedule. So like at the beginning of the year, we set up our schedule. Okay, I'm going to be in Wilmington doing estate planning 3 days a week. I'm going to be doing virtual sales with a team. We're going to be traveling, going to meet with agents. And so we've got those commitments in place. And it's interesting, like we had some of our best friends call us up and they're like, hey, we're looking at going out of town this weekend. Do y'all want to come? And I was like, let me look at the calendar. Okay, yes, we can go, but I have a Zoom call tonight. Harry's got multiple Zoom calls tomorrow. We have an agent out in that area, so we're going to go meet with them. We can be there. We can go hang out with y'all and we can hang out and drink wine and play games at 11 o'clock at night, but we are still going to be working because our priorities are we want to be able to set up that life and we can work from anywhere. So I can do Zoom calls whenever we were in Italy on our honeymoon. We can talk to agents. We can do all of that stuff. But if you don't have it in your calendar, it's very easy. Oh, I got nothing scheduled. So why would I pick up the phone? But if you put that in ahead of time, that's where your character comes in of it's in there. Are you going to leave that person hanging? Are you going to ignore? Are you going to back out on your commitment? Or are you going to do it? And you're most likely, if you've got that character, going to do it.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. As long as you got a phone, as long as you got your computer, as long as you got signal. That was one of Andy's biggest frustrations was how did he have better signal in the bush in the mountains of Africa than he did at Union Ridge? he's like, I'm calling my phone company as soon as I get home because it makes no sense. But we had great signal, and we were able to do things while we were in Africa, while we were enjoying each other's companies. While we were able to see unbelievable things and experience unbelievable things, we were still making phone calls. We were still talking to people. We were still getting business done. Sarah, so your situation is a little bit different. Last year you had a lot of life going on. You had a 2-year-old for most of the year, which is experience in itself, and you were pregnant with Winter. Jacob's his schedule is always at the beck and call of the military, so that can change in an instant. But you got deep into the estate planning last year, which required you to really focus and have those disciplines of calendar, because balancing your life as a wife, as a mother, and as a businesswoman, that it's a remarkable thing that you were able to do and the success you had last year. So talk to us about what were those disciplines that you decided going into it that you were going to have.
A big part of it, especially with the estate planning, is that it is very cyclical, and there's a very clear picture of what's going to happen when. We do the seminar, and that's when we go to work. And there were a lot of days where my last appointment started at 8 p.m. There were a lot of days where I was not home to put Michael to bed. And we went into it with the understanding that this is what it's going to look like. And this is what it's going to look like for a couple of weeks when it's really heavy, and then it'll slow back down. And we found that cycle worked really well for us. But we also had the backup support. We had a full-time nanny. Come August, we started Michael in school a half day. And then just this January, we put him in for full day. And so this year is going to look different. My husband is deploying in the next couple months. And so we're figuring out how to navigate that, where we need the support, where we need to plug the gaps, because I'm not going to slow down. I'm in Georgia for a short period of time, and this is where I've found the estate planning works incredibly well for me. That's not necessarily a guarantee wherever we go next, because we could be even more middle of nowhere, and things like that. So I need to strike while the iron's hot, and I want to take full advantage of that. So we're having those conversations of where are the gaps, where do we need to plug them, and where do we need to be ready? Because I'm going to work, and I'm going to support my family and support my boys going through it, but I'm going to work.
And then it's making some of those uncomfortable decisions about having to, it's not just the discipline of your time and making those decisions that, hey, I'm not always going to put Michael to bed. We're gonna work it out as a family on those things, but also the investment side. It's not always comfortable investing money. It's hard to say. I find it very difficult to believe that if you're actually working in your discipline and you're working, that you're not going to be profitable with us here at the Alliance. The people who don't succeed are the ones who don't actually put the time and effort into it. The magic isn't buying the leads. The magic isn't investing in a seminar. The magic is the follow through. The magic is the work part. But you also had, you had to have the disciplines of finance to be able to fund the business in terms of, office space, meeting space, having the nanny. That's an expense that a lot of people don't factor in. You had to have a nanny so that you could go to work during the day, and things like that. So, so that's an important piece of the equation as well. Beth, obviously you haven't been back to Wilmington now. We're going on 5 weeks since you last saw us in Wilmington, and it'll be another week or so. But you are just as productive and just as involved in business as always. Talk about how you having those disciplines, and maybe even taking us back further into, when you were a stay-at-home mom and I was kind of running all the business side of things, and then as the kids left the the nest, and the nest became empty. You got more engaged into the actual office and helping run the office. And now as grandma, the discipline's required to be able to be grandma to, because you're serving triple duty right now. She's grandma to Winter and Michael. She's also mama to Sarah. And then she's also helping run our organization and being available to the agents and also to our staff here at the office.
Yeah. So it does go back to, if you're married, being on the same page with your spouse and understanding that whatever job I was doing was my role in making our dreams come true. So in the beginning, when the kids were little and I was focused on mama duty, my ability to handle the things that the kids needed, to handle the things at home, to take things off of Adam's plate, to not put the honey-do list. Adam doesn't even know what a honey-do list is. But to take those off of the plate because he needed no restrictions in what his schedule was going to be. So, we did God Family Business. So he did prioritize those non-negotiables we talked about on Wednesday, the things that were the most important to the kids. He prioritized that, but then he worked around those. And so we understood that was what we were going to do. And that was, so there are times that I felt single parenting. Nothing to the extent that I'm going to watch Sarah go through as Jacob gets ready to deploy. She's going to be single parenting for months at a time. I think about what Jake and Belle Krause went through. Belle single parented for months at a time, and all the military spouses carry that burden. I did it for a couple of days, a week. And then Adam was back and I had the reinforcement. So, but it's understanding that you're on the same page. So even if your wife isn't actively involved in the business, get them to all of the events, because it was sitting side by side in conferences with Adam, locking in, hearing stories on stage that forged in us what we wanted for our family, that made it worth it, whatever sacrifice we had to go through. And then as your stage in life changes, as your roles change in business, and I'll say this, one of the beauties of the Alliance is that you get to figure out what's your strength and what's your spouse's strength. And then that allows you all to complete each other building the business. You're not competing against each other. And what you do today, your job in the business may look different a few years down the road. So when the kids started, Sarah had gone off to college and Emily was about to graduate and Andrew was in high school, I thought, okay, I'm going to run some business. And I shadowed Sarah running appointments. I drove to Wingate University, spent the weekend with her in the dorm room and went on appointments with her. I remember my first dial session. It was Sarah and Emily sitting there going, Mama, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. But you still had to carve out the time to get it done. When I was running appointments, I was telling an agent yesterday, I did not want to be anywhere near home. Put me 4 hours away, because then I could be agent running appointments and not thinking about, I need to go pick up the dry cleaning. The kids forgot their homework project. Whatever. We couldn't do the mama can you, because I was gone. And now we're on this next phase of life and entering grandparents. And I love that we get to work wherever we are. So when Michael was born, we spent 2 months in Oklahoma. When Winter was born, we came here to Macon and had that ability to be here. But Winter was born on January 16th, and guess where we had to be the next weekend? We were in Dallas. And Sarah knew that. I think her due date was originally like the 21st.
21st, yeah.
The 21st. And she was telling the doctors, oh, no. We're having this baby early because my parents have to be here and then they got to go. And so they understood that. So did I want to leave a week-old baby? No. But what we're building, with the example I need to set for Sarah and Emily and Andrew, is that I got to go. I've got to go build that business. And so this morning I was at the house where we're staying at and handling some things. And Sarah texted me. She's like, all's good at the house, but just want you to know, Michael's looking out the window going, Grandma almost here? Is Grandma almost here? So there's always going to be that pull, but you have to understand what you're working for. And when you and your spouse are on the same page, then you can handle whatever the ups and downs and challenges.
And I think one of the big things is understanding, like it was important for Beth to be a stay-at-home mom. That was her dream. That was her dream. That was her passion. And mine was to enable her to be able to do that. There are some people who aren't. They're not wired to be full-time stay-at-home. It would drive them crazy, and that's fine too. See, it doesn't matter what the dream is. What matters is, are you going to put things in place for you to be able to accomplish the dream. So, so I don't want, I just wanted to say that, don't feel like your dreams have to match our dreams, because they don't. But they have to be important to you. All right, so moving on. Actually, let's continue on with the work part. We may not get much further past this, but I think this is important. Harry, when sitting down with a new agent, I know one of the first things I do with new agents is we call it GS3. Okay, so there's something called GS3, which is goal set, get them started.
Go, sir.
Go, sir. Thank you. God bless. I got home at midnight and I was up at 4 a.m. this morning for some ungodly reason. But the first thing you do is you goal set with them. That's the dream building part. That's getting to find out what the new person is trying to accomplish through the alliance, through this business. And then the get them started part is helping them put a calendar together. Okay. And then the go serving part is holding them accountable to the calendar. Okay, and you get their permission up front. Hey, do you want to be coached, or do you just want a big pat on the back? Okay, and so when they give you permission to coach them, then coach them. Care enough to confront. Care enough to not let them drown. Okay, but so it starts with the dream. It starts with the goals that they have. But then Harry and Emily, talk about how. You guys are very good at getting new agents started, writing those first policies, and getting into some of those habits. What are some things you're trying to accomplish when you sit down with them with a calendar and help them put a schedule together? Because everybody's schedule is different. Some people are going to be full-time, some people are going to be part-time. We love part-timers, and you can be very successful here as a part-time agent, as long as, again, you understand your schedule and the disciplines required. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about that in terms of getting a new person started?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things I always talk to people about is, especially getting started, it doesn't matter necessarily what your schedule looks like. It matters more so that you have a schedule. Right. One of the conversations that I always hear Andy talk about with other agents and what I've implemented too is talking to people about, hey, you have 168 hours in a week. Where's your time at right now? Right. I understand you got your 3 kids. When are you wanting to spend time with them? Is it Sundays? Do they have basketball practice? Let's really talk about what your schedule is, right? When we talk about being a slave to your schedule, it doesn't have to all be work. You just have to know what you're doing and when you're doing it, and that way we can work around it, and then I'm able to hold them accountable to it because hung by the tongue, right? You said when we sat down and talked that you wanted to do this so you get free from your job and help your kids. Is that what you still want to do? Right. So that's really the biggest thing is just and it takes some pressure off people too, right? Because it takes them from thinking, well, I have to be a slave to my calendar. I have to do this. Have a calendar, right? Have a schedule. Where are you going to be? When are your gaps? Let's work around it. 168 hours in a week. Spend 56 of them sleeping. So you got the rest of the week. What are you doing? Right.
Yeah, I think two things. One of the things that I've heard you talk about a lot is that whatever you want, you have to sacrifice. So if you want more time and money, it means that you're probably going to have to sacrifice more time and money right now. And if you do it effectively, it's for a season. So it's okay, I have to, and we don't have kids yet, so this might be a bad example, but I have to sacrifice time with my friends. I have to sacrifice time with my family. I have to sacrifice time with my kids. It doesn't mean forever. We're not saying abandon your family. It's just when in certain moments are you going to make those decisions to sacrifice that so that ultimately you have the freedom over when you spend time with them, how much, all of those different things. And then what Harry was talking about, using the word schedule, I think I see a lot of new agents, they mix up the words schedule and calendar. Those are two different words, have two different definitions. I think a lot of people have calendars. They go, okay, today is Christmas. December 25th, Christmas Day, and they've got Thanksgiving, and they've got today's my dial day. But nobody is sitting there dialing for 24 hours straight. Like there's stuff happening in between. And so that's where, and we have it with our clients too. When you do dials, I can't do tomorrow. I've got a doctor's appointment. And we teach agents, perfect. What time is your doctor's appointment? Just because that's the only thing on their day that's scheduled, they view that as their entire day is blocked off. And I think a lot of new people start with that too. And so it's, okay, perfect. You've got this going on. What are you doing in the surrounding times? Because there is room for both when you put those big rocks in first. You don't have to, it's not saying abandon everything that's important. It's just how do we fit it in with your priorities?
Absolutely. And I just think about, some of the stories on our team. We have so many great examples of people who have been able to figure out schedule. Bridget Emeline, she still has a job, believe it or not, and yet she has a phenomenal business. She travels and she brings her kids with her when she travels. See, she makes enough money in her business that she can afford to buy plane tickets for her kids to go with her because she wants her kids to see what mom is doing and to see her working and sacrificing and serving other people. Jeremiah Adaki, I think everybody knows his name, #1 in the company last year, made over, $1.8 million to cash deposits profit in his business. He has a church. His calling is as a minister, and so he prioritizes being at home in Houston on Sundays to be at his home church, and he works his business around his minister responsibilities and duties. I think about somebody like a Matt Hughes, who is a full-time paramedic but still makes $100,000 part-time working with the Alliance, and because he understands how to discipline the calendar. And I'll throw out one. Nick and Carolyn Parsons. Just keep an eye out for that couple because they have made some crazy commitments, and including the power of association, and they understand. Better than a lot of people that I work with and talk to about the idea of committing and sacrifice and paying the price today so that you can have the life you want tomorrow. It's very gratifying to work with people who actually understand this concept. We had an agent that does a lot of dials out of the office here, and I was like, hey, just as a reminder that the staff here is on salary. They get paid regardless. You're 1099. You need to make sure you stay disciplined on your dials and everything else because you eat what you hunt. There's no salary for you like the other people that are in the office as well. And so it's a different mindset, and understanding those disciplines and understanding what you have to do when you have to do it, are critical to the long-term viability and long-term success here. All right, so I think we did a pretty good job on work there, and the disciplines required, following your schedule. I loved what you said, Emily, about the difference between calendar and schedule. Yeah, it doesn't do you any good to put Monday dials. When are you dialing? 8 a.m. You need to be dialing. We have agents call and say, hey, I can't get anybody to answer the phone. Well, quit starting your dial session at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. How about you get out of bed and you start working at 8 a.m. when people answer the phone? My name's Adam. I'm your friend. You know, but it's that mindset. That's that double-edged sword part of, okay, we can't make you wake up on time, but at the same time, you know, if you're missing the heart of the watermelon and all you're eating is the rind, it's not going to taste good. And if you don't wake up and start your workday till 2:00 in the afternoon, you've missed you've missed where the sweet core of the watermelon is, and you're missing the sweet core of the alliance by not being on the phones at 8 a.m. calling your clients and doing those things. Okay, so let's move on. Listen, read, and attend all meetings. That's 3, 4, 5. We can talk about this as a group. Some people love to read. Some people hate to read. I love, one of my favorite comedians is Nate Bargatze, and he talks about, his eyes are great at reading. It's his brain that the problem is. His eyes kill it. And, it's unfortunate that they're connected to his brain because, his eyes are like, are you not getting any of this? We've read the same sentence 5 times. What's going on up there? And some of you, I know there are people listening to us right now that just aren't good readers. They're not big readers. It's not that they can't read. They just don't like to read, and they've never disciplined themselves to read. Our kids were pretty good students. They were very good students. They got that from Beth. And so reading was never a big problem for them. But Emily, you were not a reader. Sarah loved to read. But Emily, you were not a big reader. How did you discipline yourself in terms of doing the reading that you needed to do?
So part of it came from in the 8 steps. Andy talks about, okay, can you focus on just like a page at a time? Just rip out 1 page of a book, carry it around with you for the day, and can you focus on that? And so my parents got me a Kindle because then I could just focus, instead of ripping out pages of books and having those all over, I could focus on just 1 page at a time. And I mean, to this day, to be honest, reading is an intentional habit that we make sure we're doing every single day. But mentally, it is probably one of the most difficult things for me to sit down and read. I love John Gordon books because when I have short chapters that are like 1 pages, I feel like I'm accomplishing something. I'm reading right now a John Maxwell books, and he does like 25-page chapters, and I'm just like, I just want to like get done with the chapter. Like it's more mentally daunting to me for some reason. But that doesn't change that it's an activity that we have to do every single day. And the Kindle was a big way for me to kind of help start with that. I don't have to look at a 300-page book. I just see 1 page at a time.
So what do you guys do to trick yourself? Talk about the concept of just kind of sneaking it in. I think a lot of folks, they look at when, if they hear you need to read 15 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day or an hour a day or listen to audio, same amount of time. And they're looking for big chunks in their calendar where they can do this. Talk about just kind of sneaking it in. Andy Albright is the best I've ever seen at just sneaking it in. And so Beth, kind of pick up on that.
Yeah. So yes, so in theory, right, we all have these great blocks of time, and we got our cup of tea, and we've got our cozy blanket, and we're just in our reading nook, and that's not always how life works. And so that ability to have, here's a reminder, you can read more than 1 book at a time. So, you can have a book that you have in your nice little reading nook, and then you can have another book that you have in your car. You can have another book that you have in your bathroom. Like just taking advantage of those little moments that sneak in. Instead of picking up your phone and playing a game or scrolling through Facebook, why don't you pick up and read a page? And then it's like, oh, okay. That works. And suddenly you've read 10 pages. And you're like, oh, okay. I've read my 15 minutes now. That's awesome. And so you've gotten it in these little micro doses that build up over time. And I just love that we get to, everything doesn't have to be perfect for you to execute the things that we need to do. And so understanding that we just get to sneak it in, and if we sneak in reading a page here and reading a page there, by the end of the day, we'll have read our 15 minutes. We'll have read our 30 minutes. And just embrace the imperfections, because that constant attempting to and little bits of efforts will pay off. It's the slight edge, right? Small things done over and over and over again will build up. It will compound and it will change your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same thing with audio. Understand this. If you read 5 minutes when you wake up, then you read 5 minutes at lunch, and then you read 5 minutes before you go to bed, that's 15 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be consecutive. Not to get too personal, but you're playing games on your phone in the bathroom. Have a book in your bathroom. Don't give that book out to your new agents or anything, but but I mean, it's developing those disciplines and those habits of making it priorities, making it important, and then finding the places to do that. Sarah, same thing with audio. When do you find time to plug in audio and to do some of that stuff as well?
When I'm in the car, I've got audio playing. I'm listening to a podcast. I'm listening to, if I need the pump up music, that's what I'm listening to. But most of the time there's a podcast going, and some of them are educational about things that don't matter in my work. But there's always something that I'm learning, and there's always something going on. And the only time the podcasts kind of turn off is whenever Michael says, "Do Lion King." And then we have to listen to "I've Always Wanted a Brother" and "Bye Bye" from Mufasa, because that is what he thinks Lion King is. But anytime I'm in the car, I've got a podcast going, and I am learning and growing my skills with people, my education level, especially with this estate planning stuff. That's a different education level that I needed to develop and that I'm still developing. But it doesn't matter if it's a 4-minute drive or a 45-minute drive. There's audio playing in my car.
Same question. Where do you find time to sneak in the audio and the reading and making sure that you're prioritizing that and building those muscles and those habits?
So I love, Riddle told me once, he said, "Hey, how much music do you listen to? How many hours of music are you listening to in the car?" And I'd honestly say quite a bit of music. He said, "Do you think you could take 15 minutes, 20 minutes out of your music time to listen to an audiobook?" And I was like, yeah, I could do that. I do quite a bit of driving. So when you think about it like that, it's easy to kind of transition into it, right? I love this. There's a little app in the settings where you can see how much time you spend on each of the things that you have on your phone, right? I think if you open that up, most people would be shocked by their own phone.
Embarrassed.
Embarrassed, shocked, right? So it really is more of just a mindset thing. Can you set aside the little moments to just take a few minutes, read a page out of a book? Right. And it's small steps too. If it's just a page, take the small step, read just a page, read a couple words, take a break, read another couple words, right? But that's really the biggest thing for me.
And if you're traveling for your team, airplanes are like overtime.
Yes.
Bonus time.
That's right.
I love being on airplanes because I know I'm going to get a big chunk of reading in. And by the way, I loved the way Riddle put it. Can you take 15, 20 minutes and listen? Nobody said you can't listen to music ever again. Nobody said you can't listen to ESPN radio here and there. It's just don't always do that. Nobody said reading the Bible doesn't count. It's a book. It counts. But, my favorite thing is this. Your kids take six subjects in school. Beth alluded to this. You can handle more than one book at a time. You can read the Bible and read 8 Steps to Success inside the circle of you. By the way, one of the things I said last night was I've heard Andy teach this. Jake and Veray Joseph absolutely adopted it. Read the book 8 Steps to Success. At least once a month, every month until you're making a 6-figure income. Because you need to just keep saturating your mind with these 8 steps and build those muscles and build those disciplines. I'm trying to get in better shape, so I'm walking more, doing a little jogging here and there. And so I have audio while I'm exercising, I plug audio in, and for me that's perfect. It gives me 30 minutes, 45 minutes of audio, and it's the little things that slip by us. That's why the discipline is so important. A lot of us have done the 75 hard program that Priscilla put out there, and there's 5 things you have to do with the 75 hard program, and you have to do it for 75 straight days. And the one that catches most people, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the one that catches the most people is this: you're supposed to take a picture of yourself every day, and that's so easy to do. But it's also so easy to I'll do it later, I'll do it later, I'll do it later, and next thing you know, you forgot to do it, and you were 38 days in. Now you're 1 day in, because of something so simple that if you just develop that habit of first thing in the morning as I'm getting in the shower, or if you shower at night, last thing at night as I'm getting in the shower, just take my quick picture, and then I know I have it done every time. It's like taking medication. Most people who take medication take it at the same time every day. So it's just developing those habits. Something else Andy taught me is this. I've been coming back from Africa. My sleep schedule is all messed up. Traveling a lot. I've traveled a lot with the Alliance in terms of going to different cities and hotel rooms, and I don't always sleep the best in different time zones and all that. And there's a lot of times I'm waking up at 2:30 in the morning, wide awake, and he said go to work. If I get up at 3 in the morning, I'm just going to go. I'm going to start working. So I do my journaling. I do my reading at 3 o'clock in the morning, and maybe I'll get tired at 4:30, and I'll go back and I'll be able to sleep a couple more hours. But the beauty of the Alliance is this: you can wake up at 3 in the morning, go to work, get stuff done, get your day started, do all of those things. And if you need a nap at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's your business. You can carve that into your schedule too, and catch up on that sleep you missed, and just keep rolling through the day. The key though is that those disciplines. And conferences, that's more of a decision than a discipline. Just decide now. To me, it's not a discipline. If we have someplace I'm supposed to be at, I'm going to be at it. That's just a decision Beth and I made 34 years ago. That if Andy and Jane said, "Hey, we need you here," then we were going to be there. And so that's not a big thing. The last 3 steps in our last 6 minutes, we're going to cover the last 3: teachable, accountable, and maintaining positive communication. Look, guys, that's just your character. If you need a talk on how to discipline your character, work on it. That's the best I can say on that. But choosing to be teachable, I don't know how. We'll talk about that. Let's talk about the do you want to be rich or do you want to be right? Because being teachable, if you're not teachable, it's because you want to be right. And it's got to be your idea, and it's got to be your genius that is growing your business. Or if you're teachable, then that tells me you want to be rich, and it doesn't have to be your idea. Emily and Harry, talk a little bit about the concept of being right versus being rich, being teachable, and then also being accountable to, that's what the whole discipline thing is. It's all about accountability to yourself. So if you would talk about that.
So I think it's important finding those mentors in your life and look on the fruit of the tree. Look at the fruit on the tree, whatever that works. You gotta see if this is the person. So I mean, Andy is a huge mentor in my life, Andy and Jane Albright, and it's okay. They have the fruit on the tree. Now, Andy has developed further than I have developed. He has created a lifestyle that I would like to create. And so some of those things that he says to do are so far outside of my comfort zone right now because I have to develop into them. And just because it's uncomfortable for me doesn't mean he's wrong. He can be right. He knows what I need to do. And so sometimes it's taking a step back and say, okay, maybe the way I'm living my life, maybe the decisions I'm making are not the correct ones because obviously they're not yielding the results that he has. So I have to take a step back, humble my ego a little bit and go, okay, I'm going to just act as if. I am going to trust because I have decided that Andy and Jane are mentors I want to follow. I am going to make those decisions even if it's not necessarily my idea, my comfort, what I think is the right way to do it.
Yeah, and the biggest thing also is just setting aside your ego, right? realizing that you can learn things from other people. I know there's a lot of people out there who don't think that's true. So just setting aside your ego, opening yourself up to be able to learn. If we have access to Andy Albright, if you were playing basketball and you could talk to Michael Jordan, would you not want to learn something from Michael Jordan? Or would you have too big of an ego to ask him about his fadeaway jump shot? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I had a conversation with Andy the other day, and I was like, all right, I had a thought process. I did think about what I was doing, but I know it wasn't correct. So change my thought process. Show me what I should have done.
Right.
And that's the teachable part, and it's a discipline to keep your ego in check. Sarah, how do you maintain your accountability as to your family, to your business, to your to everything that you have, to your friends as well, all of that? How do you maintain that accountability?
That again comes back to your schedule, comes back to your calendar of these are my priorities. These are the things I'm going to be there at and the things that I'm not going to be there at. And then living by that when you see it, but knowing what your priorities are of these are the moments I'm going to be there for my friends. These are the moments I'm going to be there for my kids and for my spouse, and then following through, because these are also the moments that I'm going to be there for my clients. And those people are just as big of priorities in different ways in my life, and being accountable to show up for the things that I say I'm going to show up for is what's essential. And the good news is those people are going to give you feedback if you're not showing up. Your clients are going to have negative things to say if you said you're going to be there and you're not. Your kids are going to start throwing tantrums and things if you're not at the things you said, and your friends are going to pull away if you're not following through on those commitments. But it's knowing where those priorities are and being that slave to your calendar, to your schedule of knowing this is what I'm doing when.
So I left Beth 1 minute for this last question, and I did that intentionally. How important is it, Beth, to bite your tongue and have positive communication? Because there are a lot of times I know you want to say things to me, and I deserve to hear them, but they're not going to be productive in that moment. So talk about the importance of disciplining the positive communication to keep your business strong, your family strong, and your marriage strong.
Right. Absolutely. So there are, we have that choice. There's a filter between the time something pops in your head and the time that actually comes out of your mouth. You do have a moment to think about, are these words going to move us forward in our relationship, or are they going to hurt us? And I had to learn that there were questions that I asked Adam, like, how many sales did you get? That did not help us, because if he'd had a great day, he would tell me. And if he didn't have if he'd had a bad day, he didn't want to tell me. And so I'm like jamming it in his face, like, tell me. And learning to reframe, like, okay, what were the things that you were working on controlling? That's the number of dials. How are your dials going this week? That was a better question, because that was something that was totally in his control. We get to choose our words shape our life. Harry mentioned hung by the tongue. So what are you saying and how are you saying it? I don't know how many times I told the kids, it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it that's causing the problem. You get to choose that. So make that decision, that quality discipline, that the words that are going to come out of your mouth are going to be words that help move you forward in the relationship. Communicating with a positive attitude isn't saying that life doesn't have any hiccups and problems and challenges. It's going to. But when our words and our questions and our heart is, how do we solve this? How do we get better? How do we do more to impact more people? That posture will change your life.
AIT next week. It's not too late to slide one more person into Albright Intensive Training. Starts Monday. There are cabin events that still have a couple slots open if you want to get somebody new to the cabin event. And guys, we appreciate it. Thank you, Tia Land. Thank you, Billy Chavis. Thank you, Alliance. Everybody back at headquarters for helping us coordinate all this. None of this happens without having dedicated people behind the scenes doing all these things. And thank you, Andy Albright, for trusting us to talk to your team today. We love you guys. Appreciate you, Alliance Nation. And let's go out and find one more. Have a great day. Take care.